Hey, good evening, everybody. We were offline last night because of this. Had a bit of a water leak, so we had to dig that up, and obviously that was a pretty high priority, but we've got kind of a temporary repair going on, and then the final fix is going to be tomorrow. So yeah, lots of fun with that. But the weather has been pretty hot. We got to almost 100 degrees yesterday, and pretty much the same thing today. Clear skies, and this is looking to the south. So we're starting to get into more of a typical pattern here for August. And the view outside right now, not much change. A little bit of stratocumulus here and there. Okay, so that leads us into the charts. We'll cover the SQTs in just a little bit. But as far as tropical weather, yeah, we've got Gert off of the northeast coast. And that's recurving, heading back out into the Atlantic there. So by recurvature, we're talking about a movement kind of like that. And let's see the forecast path. Yeah, not even grazing Newfoundland there. So that's out of the picture, but it is a Cat 2 storm with sustained 100-mile-an-hour winds. Then we got a couple of other systems out in the Atlantic, a couple lined up here. Disturbance 1, Disturbance 2, and then Disturbance 3. What are we looking at over the next 5 days? SPC is going for tracks like this. Well, originally they had been expected this to pass over Dominica, Puerto Rico, and Cuba, which would have a big chance of bringing it into the Gulf. But now we've seen it kind of split. Southern storm going into the Caribbean, so Honduras, Nicaragua, Belize landfall. And then these have a high potential for recurving. It'll depend really on the steering flow, and we'll start taking a look at steering flow as we get into next week. But these, for now, they're probably going to graze the coast, but I saw a couple of ensemble models that were taking it into the northeast like that. This is a look at the Atlantic here. This is actually for a couple days ago, so we need to fix this. Okay, August 16th. And this will reveal those shortwaves coming off of the African coast there. Now, there is one artifact that's very often seen, and that's the sun glints. So you have to kind of get used to ignoring these. But elsewhere, yeah, you can see dust coming off of the African coast right there. Let's try taking a look at the optical depth. And we've got some dust out there in the Atlantic, and some passing through the Bahamas, Cuba, and Dominica. And then we see the wildfires. Looks like a lot of the smoke plume is now in Alberta and Saskatchewan, so that might be somewhat out of the picture for the eclipse. We don't have much coverage of British Columbia, so we're probably going to have to wait to tomorrow to check on that. A lot of the smoke has also moved eastward into the Hudson Bay area. Yeah, look at that right there. I wonder if we can get a webcam for Churchill. Let me give that a try. It's always kind of problematic with webcams because some links are dead and others take forever to load. So I'll just try clicking a few sites here. Hopefully this doesn't mess up the stream too much. But what I'm hoping to do is see if they're seeing that smoke problem in that area. And, well, it looks like they've got it pointed almost directly up at the sky. But, yeah, it does have definitely a hazy look around here. And what is all this? Those must be other streams coming from that website. But anyway, that is probably about as good as I can do for Churchill, but that does reveal a little bit of the smoke there. Okay, getting closer to home, let's check out the long wave pattern, because that's going to factor into the upcoming eclipse weather. Over the past week, we've seen a ridge in the Canadian prairies, troughing coming inland and really breaking up that forest fire problem in British Columbia. Current patterns are looking like this right here. Got a trough moving through the high plains. Trough now moving from western Canada into the prairies, and the big ridge has shifted into the Hudson Bay area right there. So we still have a little bit of that omega block going on there, but it is starting to break up because of this very strong trough out in Alaska that's helping to chisel away at that omega block. 250 millibar pattern up at about 34,000 feet. There you go. You can see the ridge earlier this morning. And then a quick look at the Great Plains itself. You can see we've gotten into a weather pattern that's supportive of thunderstorms. Look at that jet stream coming into the Great Plains. The height lines come together very sharply in this region right here. So strong pressure gradient, and we've got a jet stream right there around Amarillo to Elkhart, and probably by this evening it has shifted out into the lower plains. Surface analysis. Well, we've got a frontal system. We were looking at this yesterday up in the Canadian Arctic. So very cool weather. We're seeing the shift to a fall pattern definitely up in the high Arctic. Temperatures looking about 50, 48, 52. So yeah, here it's 39. Temperatures are falling, but a lot of warm air still up to the north there. I can see readings around 70. In our area, we have a very weak cold front. There's a baroclinic low right there over the Omaha area. And their analysis does not have that, but cold front sweeping southward, and we're going to expect to find a area of thunderstorms in this area, because you can see from the south moisture flowing northward, Gulf is open, and where that impinges on the frontal system, that's going to be a good area for thunderstorm activity. That plus the trough, the jet stream that we just saw moving out into the Great Plains. A lot of ingredients coming together for thunderstorms. And let's see if we can take a look at that. Yep, there they are. This is GR level 2 showing a line of thunderstorms, a small MCS from about Joplin down through Bartlesville to about Watonga and Elk City. So still north of the Oklahoma City area. A few thunderstorm warnings on that. Looking for small hail, strong wind gusts, so kind of outflowish. And we can see the outflow right here. So with that outflow driven pretty far ahead of these storms, I think the tornado risk is pretty low. And also the fact that we don't have the line breaking up into individual cells. And that's probably a consequence of weak capping. So we get multiple cells along that frontal boundary. Plus, when you have a large-scale frontal boundary with a strong temperature contrast. A strong temperature contrast is very conducive to producing linear structures, like what you see here. So these are moving east-southeast, and they should be in the Oklahoma City area probably later this evening. Okay, we don't have the latest 200 millibar analysis, still looking at this morning's data. If we wanted to look at that, we can bring that into digital atmosphere, no problem. But for now, this is good here. 700 millibar temperature showing a little bit of warm air aloft, 12 Celsius there at Oklahoma City, 13 at Amarillo. But up to the north, only 10 to 9 Celsius. So you can see the weaker capping up in Kansas where these storms developed. Okay, heading to the surface chart, or to the satellite. There's our area of thunderstorms. Pretty much from Wellington and Blackwell down through Enid and down to the Watauga and Sealing area. Okay, let me take a look at chat, see what we got going on. And we've got quite a crowd, and I am going to be covering the eclipse weather here right after we finish up with all this radar and analysis material. We got Ron Chalfant here, a lot of regulars. Andrew, Sue M., and David Moore. We have Ryan down there in Miami keeping a watch on the tropics. And Ryan says the Atlantic Hurricane Rail Yard is open. I like Ryan's metaphors there. Open season for the Islanders and East Coasters coming up. Prepare accordingly. Ryan says second and third wave is problematic. David Moore asking the latest on the water main. Yeah, I appreciate that. The water is leaking, but we do have pressure now. And what had happened is the electric company had went in and did some brush hogging under their lines, and that probably crushed one of the pipes and weakened it. So we're thinking that's the problem. Andrew, looking forward to the eclipse there. Ron saying hello. Carl Berghoff saying hi. Burl H as well. Carl says his Monday forecast is looking very stormy and cloudy. Carl, you might have to remind me where you're located. My memory is slipping a bit. Fun with Tech is also here. Megan John. Multiple tornado warnings today in Minnesota, so we might have to take a look up there. Tornado in Minneapolis right now. Okay, I guess we have to go north, so let's do that. We're looking at GR Level 2 here. This is kind of a neat radar viewer. For those of you new to the program, we use GR Level 2 a lot. And this allows us to look at the actual raw data coming from the radar sites. So we do have a tornado warning west of Minneapolis, out here around the Glencoe area. Looks like it's been canceled, but earlier we had radar indicated rotation. That was at 8:14. They canceled that. Looks like they canceled that very quickly. But the radar data will be coming up here very shortly, and there it is. So, yeah, this doesn't have the appearance of a big supercell like we're accustomed to. A supercell would probably look something like this. And what we have more, this is more of a kind of an elevated area of showers and thunderstorms. And most likely what we saw was some rotation appearing there on the radar. There's the rotation, and yeah, there are some very strong motions in that cloud field. Now, what's really important is the height of the radar beam. So take a look at the bottom of the screen. And you'll see right here, this shows the altitude of the cursor. Radar site located right here off to the right. There's the radar site. So at this altitude here, we're at about 1,000 feet above the ground. So yeah, for 1,000 feet high, these are some very strong motions. In red, that's always going to be outbound. Now it could be outbound in this sense, or outbound in that sense, because the radar is located right here. But we know that it's going something like this here. And most likely, the motion is probably something like that right there. And what we're really concerned with is gradients, velocity gradients, because that's basically shear. And we've probably got a very tight couplet right there. And by couplet, we're talking about a area of strong inbound and strong outbound velocities. So let's try to do some storm relative velocity. I'll try subtracting out this really high motion, and we do that by setting a motion vector. And I'm going to set that maybe at about 130 at 20. And that'll kind of normalize the field. And yeah, now you can see things really standing out. Looks like we have a couplet here. It's a broad scale couplet. I'm going to set a dot right there. In the distance to the other part of the couplet, that's about 3.5 miles. So that's broad scale rotation. That's going to be a mesocyclone. Doesn't look like a tornado, but definitely some rotation centered about right here. That's about the center of the rotation. So yeah, if you have GR level 2, you can analyze these storms at home, just like the weather service forecasters do. And let's take a look at a couple of higher levels and see if there's any elevated rotation. And yeah, we've got consistency of that mesocyclone all the way up to 5,000 feet. And even up at 12,000 feet, we have some broad scale rotation. So one last look at the storm. Interesting little donut shape. So definitely something going on in that storm, most likely rain-wrapped and rotating, some sort of vortex embedded there. So that's going to be just northeast of Silver Lake there. And that in turn is going to be about, let's see, where's Minneapolis? It's going to be about 37 miles west of Minneapolis. Okay, elsewhere, what's going on? Here's the infrared I decided to take a look at in the Atlantic. We're looking way out there past the South American coast. This is infrared imagery, and you can see the waves coming off the African coast right there. A couple of other easterly waves, and then the big easterly wave near Puerto Rico showing up right here. Here in the U.S., water vapor looking like this. There's definitely some dry air in the mid and upper levels, and that's going to augment thunderstorm severity. That helps generate outflow. It helps strengthen downbursts, and there's the MCS right there. So let's check out the SKUTs, and we can see that around Oklahoma City, yeah, we've got some of that dry air moving in. Oklahoma SKUT is looking like this right here, and I accidentally accidentally did a 12-hour SQT, but what we see here is the red showing the upper level moisture here at Norman, Oklahoma this morning. Dried out quite a bit today. There's the dry air aloft over that area. That's what you see there in that water vapor imagery. Not much change in the rest of the SQT. Still showing a little bit of capping there. And maybe a little bit less moisture in the levels just off of like 3,000, 4,000 upward. So probably some of that dry air has mixed down into the lower levels there. Okay, elsewhere we had a few requests for SQTs. This is as good as I could do for Los Angeles. This is San Diego, Miramar Naval Air Station. Looks like very little change. Maybe some much warmer air compared to yesterday. This is a comparison with last night, and we can see that things were a lot cooler. 60 degrees there last night, very cool weather, and now we see temperatures more in the 70s in the low levels. But the rest of the sounding looks very similar, so persistence is a good forecast technique for that area. Denver, there's a look at Denver. We can see it's cooled down there. Yesterday we had some very warm air, very incredibly steep lapse rate. So a very unstable profile, inverted V, definitely good for thunderstorm activity. And now we've seen a little bit of a cool down, so instability there is a little bit less today. And the flow aloft at Denver a little bit more northwesterly. And then at Chicago, this is as good as I could do. This is Lincoln. So compared with yesterday, we can see yesterday we had a lot of dry air aloft, and it is moistened up. And as in fact, we've got a lot of stratus. We have a lot of altostratus and cirrostratus aloft, and there it is right there. The lower levels, a little bit of warming, a little bit of moistening from the surface up to about 12,000 feet. So feel free to do this with some of the stations that you're interested in. I did this in PaintShop Pro, and it's actually pretty easy. You just grab a sounding, copy image, paste it into PaintShop Pro. You colorize it with adjust brightness and take that down like this, because you can't colorize black because black is an absence of color. So you have to make it gray. Then you use the colorize tool, make it red, and now you can paste on like a different sounding. And I'll just do this really quickly. Copy image. You would do edit, paste as new layer. And then you use this layer panel here, and you can use darken. And that kind of merges both of the soundings there. So this is a good way to visualize changes in sounding data across time or across space between two different stations. Okay, we're pretty much up to the forecast, and we're going to look at the eclipse weather. Well, what kind of changes do we have over the next several days? Let me find my charts here. 200 millibars is pretty much the key this time of year to what's happening. This is up at about 39,000 feet. And this is relatively easy for the forecast models to predict. The one problem we have is when there's small scale waves, like what you see right here. Those are a little bit trickier, but the large scale waves like that, those are definitely going to be fairly accurate at this time for the eclipse. So this is the pattern today. You can see the jet stream there over Kansas. A couple of troughs. A couple of ridges. So over the next couple days, let's see, for tomorrow's webcast, things progress very rapidly to the east. And then for tomorrow, zonal flow over the Central Plains. If we had any moisture, we could probably get some thunderstorm activity here, but that front may be clearing things out a little bit, especially with that troughing aloft indicating the presence of cool air. Going into Friday's webcast, things shift out into the Midwest. Trough coming up on Illinois. So maybe a chance of rain there for the Midwest. For Saturday, oh, interesting, they plotted the eclipse path here. Okay, for Saturday, ridging across the plains, new trough coming on shore. For Sunday, when we do the webcast, it's going to be looking like this, ridging across the Great Plains. And ridging is always helpful for good visibility and good weather. So a lot of good things going for parts of the central U.S. here. And then we get up to eclipse time. Okay, here's the eclipse time. Right there. Okay, what do we have here? What can we forecast? Well, we have a trough off the west coast, so this is going to be an area of cold core convection. So there may not be too much cloudiness earlier in the day, but as the afternoon progresses, clouds will rapidly develop in the San Joaquin Valley. That may be a problem in places like Sacramento and Bakersfield, maybe even Los Angeles. We also have a bit of a subtropical jet, or maybe a split flow polar front jet over Utah. See that right there? Most likely area for cloudiness based on this pattern is going to be along and south of the jet. Okay, so here's the jet. Most likely area for clouds like cirrus, scattered to broken cirrus layers. That's going to be maybe kind of in that area right there. I don't know if that's going to affect Nebraska. There may be a lot of breaks, but as you go west, Denver, maybe a little bit of increasing problems. And then I think in the Four Corners area, especially west of this ridge, we could see some clouds in this area, mid and upper level clouds. Downstream from this ridge, that's going to tend to suppress cloudiness, so maybe a little bit more scattered to broken clouds right there. Ridging across the Midwest right there. You can see we've got a ridge right there over Iowa. Now, instability this time of year can be a problem, so we could have debris, maybe some clouds in the low levels, some early convection. That could be a problem throughout the southeast with all the moisture there. But this is definitely better than having a trough just to the east of this, the west of this area. There is a trough over South Carolina that's indicating some cooler temperatures aloft, maybe some instability there, so we may see some showers developing pretty early in that area. So this is kind of the pattern-based method of forecasting, so now we have a better idea what to expect. Now the next thing I want to look at is moisture. Let's start out by looking at the precipitable water. Weather Service forecasters are looking at these patterns here. That's one thing they're going to go straight to and look at. There's the precipitable water right there. For eclipse time, give me a second. I got to get this up to eclipse time. This is not the one we want to be looking at. waiting for the frames to load, having to load about 20 or 30 frames here, and almost there. And there we go. There's eclipse time. We see a lot of precipitable water across the lower Mississippi. I think Arkansas, that's been showing up to be a problem pretty consistently, so I think there may be some issues there with thunderstorms, and even if there's not thunderstorms, there may be a lot of debris clouds scattered to overcast. The models have backed off a little bit on clouds in South Carolina. Surprisingly, not much moisture in the Appalachians here. Let's look at precipitable water anomaly. So this is a measure of whether there's more water vapor through the column or less than normal for this time of year. See, I'm giving you the extreme details on the forecast for the eclipse. I'm not just, giving you a map, and we're actually going through and working through the puzzles here to see what's going to happen. Okay, here it is. This is the precipitable water anomaly. So we can see that there's more moisture than normal for Iowa, Paducah, St. Louis, Kansas City, Joplin, St. Joseph, and Iowa. So that could mean, especially with a southerly flow, some areas of thunderstorms in this area. Looks like a little bit drier in Nebraska. Kind of indeterminate, maybe a little bit of moisture here. We've been seeing the possibility of a wave moving through the northern Rockies. Things look dry in Oregon, very good. That's been looking pretty good. And then for South Carolina, going a little bit dry. So I think maybe the models have kind of backed away. Maybe those of you in Atlanta, maybe it's going to be good to head east. But we'll see. We're going to just kind of see how the models shape up over the weekend. Okay, let's check out the deterministic forecast of precipitation. Eclipse time going to be looking like this. You can see they're going for some sort of MCS here over southeastern Iowa. And where did that come from? Let me go backwards. MCSs are usually a nocturnal type system. And we can see that this originated from development along maybe a warm front right here during the evening on Sunday. So it developed in central and eastern Nebraska and basically pushed eastward during the night and early morning Monday. So yeah, that's going to end up in Iowa. There's going to be problems there in Iowa for Monday, I think. So you can see the remains ending up there. Nebraska looks pretty good. A little more indeterminate through Paducah, and then it is looking a little bit better for the Atlanta, South Carolina area, based on the current models. Okay. So let me just put this together for you, and I'm going to show you the forecast in case you did not catch the eclipse forecast. This is my forecast here of clouds. So, as you can see, I would probably back off a little bit on this. I think a lot of this probably looks okay. Arkansas, definitely a possibility for clouds there. And this area here may be a little less extensive than shown in the Midwest. And then definitely things look good through this area. And I do think there is going to be a little bit of an upper level wave moving through this area. And of course, near the subtropical jet, probably a little bit of cirrus and altocumulus. Also, thunderstorms in the Four Corners area, the higher terrain. Even if they're not going on during the afternoon on Monday, the debris fields will be kind of wafting northeastward or north through that area. Okay, some other fields that you can look at if you'd like to. You can head to pivotalweather.com or your favorite model site. We've got 500 millibar. Let's see, this, what I'm suggesting to look at is relative humidity. Yeah, here we go. Upper level moisture, 200 millibar relative humidity. That'll give you an idea of your cirrus. So at eclipse time, let me see if I can find a way to turn off the loop so we can get just what we need. Okay, so here's the 200 millibar pattern at eclipse time, 200 millibar relative humidity. So here you can see the subtropical cirrus model keeping a little bit further south. It's also showing a little bit of anvil debris from that MCS from Iowa eastward into the Great Lakes. And then just a lot of other debris from convection that's happened over the southeastern U.S. right there. Things looking very good there for Nebraska. And then we get a little bit closer to this upper level trough. So yeah, maybe a little bit of a problem in Idaho and Oregon. 500 millibar relative humidity. This is indicating some issues in the northern plains here. So a lot of this is probably going to be debris from the convection Sunday night over the Rockies. So I think that'll probably affect parts of Wyoming. Could be a problem there at Casper. Things looking fairly decent for Nebraska. And then here's the debris over the northern Mississippi area. And a little bit of drying indicating for southern Carolina. So, yeah, good news for southern Carolina here. And then at 850, this is about 5,000 feet. We're looking at the lower level moisture, concentrated mostly on Arkansas. East Texas may be a problem, and all the way into Alabama and southern Georgia. Okay, and you can also see that we've got high pressure dominating the eastern U.S. See that clockwise circulation around the high? Looks like the high is centered over North Carolina, about right there. So that's going to affect a little bit of drier air southeastward. Should be okay in Virginia there, but the further south you go, of course, the more you get into that moisture. But not very much low-level moisture in the western U.S. So thunderstorm, old convective debris, that'll be the main problem, I think, for that area, and a little bit of dynamically produced cirrus, maybe around Idaho and Oregon. So anyway, we'll continue taking a look at this, and I'll give you a new forecast tomorrow. And hopefully that's helpful for a lot of you. And even if you're not in the totality area, you will get a lot of very cool eclipse effects. The 90% area runs through here. So that's enough to see some significant darkening and very neat effects. If you look at shadows, shadows will be a lot sharper. The view through trees, the trees will show very interesting effects on the ground, like little moons all over the grass, for example. So this should be a very interesting day there. Okay, let me take a look at the chat here. We've got Carl, Fred talking, John talking, watching live from New York City. Justin Pulliam is here. Meg and John working for a little while now, keeping friends and families updated on the dangerous weather in Minnesota. Got Michael Burrell here. Ryan reminding us that no land interaction with those hurricanes means full development with very little resistance. Fred Reamer says, what do you want to see in the remarks? He's making observations there. I have no idea what to put in the remarks, to tell you the truth. Pivotal weather has started putting in the eclipse path. Yeah. Fred pointing that out. John will be watching the eclipse from Nebraska, and I'm probably going to be in the Geneva area, maybe west or east, depending on the clouds. What's the confidence in high precipitation water in the southeast U.S.? Just medium. Ryan seeing some buffering, probably from loading that GFS there. Sorry about that. We are working on some ways of speeding up the webcast, so maybe next week we'll have that figured out here. Carl says, before the major use of computers with forecasting, how did they plot the 1,000 through 500 millibar thickness chart? They did it manually. In fact, they did a lot of isentropic analysis back in the 30s and 40s, and they would fax those over to other offices, or they would produce those locally. Most of the offices, they had a plotter. His job was just to sit there and plot charts. And Burl H says, Weather Brains is streamed live Monday at 8 p.m. Central. Okay, yeah, we've got a sort of a conflict with Weather Brains, but on Monday, we're not going to have the weathercast because I'm going to be out on the eclipse. I might send some live stream if I can get a connection. Actually, Monday I'm going to be driving back south, so I don't know. I might check in with you guys then. And Jeremy Albritton, watching live in Marshall, Texas. Okay. Anyway, that's about all I got for tonight. We'll take one last look at the storms there in Minnesota. There's that area of rotation we were looking at, and that has dissipated. See, there it was earlier. And it just kind of moved west-northwest and weakened. So, looking pretty good. I don't see any very tight gradients. And as you might imagine, the westward movement means that there's low pressure down to the south. So probably what we have is a little bit of a baroclinic low, possibly in this area right here. Maybe an occlusion. Maybe an occluded front right there, and on the back side, maybe a little bit of a dry slot working in. Okay, that's about all I got for this evening. I appreciate you watching the webcast. I'm going to go ahead and have dinner here, and I hope you all have a good evening. We'll do the eclipse weather again for tomorrow, and I hope you all have a good evening. Take care.